foresight, I think, is kind of useful in predicting what problems may have. A lot of these problems are not hard to spot if you just know what you're looking for. And family dynamics usually play a pretty big role in that.
And that goes to something I raised before. I used the phrase insurance with respect to paying for a fiduciary. The other aspect of that is what you were talking about, Adam, which I view as risk management. You know, many people get into relationships and think everything's going to be wonderful, it's always going to work out, it's going to be great. Part of, I think, any professional's job, and particularly attorneys, because we deal with the issues that go bad, is to identify the risks and understand where things can go wrong. And to the extent we have any crystal ball, which is very difficult, but try and figure out potential problems down the road so we can head them off if at all possible.
But a lot of things are not hard to predict. I mean, there are certain patterns of behavior that we see over and over again. We've handled, what, 4,000 estate disputes in our practice over the years, and there are certain patterns that repeat themselves. If you describe a particular family dynamic, you can tell with some degree of certainty what's likely to play out if you pass assets a certain way or if you leave control a certain way. And there are ways to avoid a lot of those things.
And I think that's why one needs to visit with competent professionals who have seen those dynamics and can anticipate what issues they have.
There you go. Shameless plug.
When we talk about family dynamics, though, one thing we fail to consider is the family dynamics that you're thinking about now, which you should share with your planner, aren't necessarily the family dynamics we're going to see later, because we're going to be talking about children who may or may not progress the way we think they're going to. And I talk to planners all the time, and we're going to deal with the aging surviving parent. So when we do reciprocal wills, where you say mom's will and dad's will are identical, the truth is they're identical for now, but really it's the first to die will. And the second person may change it as they remarry, as they age, as they have different caregivers. So we often tell planners, even if you have great faith in your family and they're very good decision makers and they're very mature, you still should put into your documents things that protect the aging parent from potential problems. So what are some of those protections that we talked about that people can use to try to protect against what happens later after they die?
Well, I don't know if this is a protection to put in place, but as you were asking your question, it occurred to me that I've seen a number of situations where the heirs believe there was a lot more money or a lot more assets, and when the will, you know, there's the inventory of the property and one figures out actually what's in the estate, there's a lot of acrimony because they believe, you know, stepmom took something, or, you know, one sibling or another took something, and
The dad said there'd be plenty of money, we wouldn't have to worry.
Exactly.
So that goes back to disclose, disclose, disclose.
Exactly, and it's not directly responsive to your question, but in terms of what folks can do, I think to the extent, you know, there's always the question about how much you want to share with your sibling, your children about your assets, but to the extent that they can have some sense of what's really there, as opposed to what they might be hoping is there, I think that may go a long way to helping resolve some unanticipated issues.
And you can do third parties. You can say, you know, for my kids, I'm going to let an uncle see the numbers if you're afraid the kids are seeing them, or say they'll see it at an older age. I might suggest one other area that we see trusts being used primarily as tax vehicles and following a lot of tax rules for estate planning. And I might suggest that we start looking at trusts in the more traditional sense to try to create a trustworthy place to handle things. So let's talk about what happens with money after the surviving spouse dies that says, you know, it's okay for the money to go to the surviving spouse, but afterwards I want it to go to the children from this union, or partially, or to a certain charity, as opposed sometimes to just leaving it up to the surviving spouse, who may succumb to pressures by individual children or by predators or caregivers. And I think we're seeing huge numbers of caregivers taking advantage of the elderly who truthfully are thankful to the caregivers. Is there anything else like that that we can talk about that might help in protecting aging adults in their planning?
Well, I still keep coming back to communication among the families. I mean, we talk about this and we say it's hard, but we need to do it anyway. We really need to make a push, not just us as litigators, but planning attorneys, bank trust officers, whoever's doing the work with the families, to sit them down and discuss this stuff. And it's often very hard for parents to talk about their assets with their kids, but you know, there's not a better time to do it than while you're alive. It becomes very difficult afterwards, and having those discussions now in a safe environment, maybe with other professionals involved, if you have difficulty explaining those things to your kids, is the way to do it. You can sit down with your attorney and your financial advisor, or a family psychologist if that's the kind of family.
So you're advising that use your professional to help you have that conversation if you're not able to do it on your own.
Yes, most professionals would be happy to sit down with not just you, but you and your family, and help explain the family plan, the succession plan, the dynamics of the family's assets, and how the family expects those to be handled and managed in the future.
And let me add one other thing on that subject. Most parents, certainly my parents, think that everything has to be fair. And I think that's great. But how you define fairness is very interesting. All of our children will be different, and they'll go off in life and do different things and have different needs. So I think when we're sitting in the planning process, we should think about those things. So for example, if there's been, and we see this all the time, a family vacation home, where the family says, gosh, we've loved it, and they give the family vacation home to the 3 kids. Several of the kids may not share those views, or if they share the views that this is the greatest place to be, don't live near there, or can't afford it. So when we start talking about assets, whether they be businesses or family homes, we should talk about the reality of the management, because that's where we're seeing problems, is the management after they die or after they age.
And another classic scenario is a family that has 2 children. One's a successful, very wealthy cardiologist. The other is a starving artist, and the family leaves more money to the starving artist because they think that's fair for him or her, because the other one doesn't need it as much. And it turns out that after parents die, money is almost a proxy for love, and mom didn't love me enough. And if the parents don't discuss this ahead of time, then the child who didn't get as much is left feeling hurt. And that only exacerbates any disputes that go on in the administration of these.
Whereas often if you discuss it in advance, you, my doctor's son, I'm going to leave a little less to. My daughter's going to get a little more because she's a poor starving artist. Everybody okay with that? And everybody will be okay with that. They just don't like surprises. Nobody likes surprises.
So I don't want to say this out loud, but my wife is actually right. That if you talk about things in advance, it avoids problems.
In your case, she's right.
Interesting. Okay, well, with that note, and shout out to my wife, I want to thank everyone for listening to Wealth Matters today, where we discuss the opportunities and challenges of preserving and managing wealth. For more information about Gaslowitz Frankel, please go to our website at gaslowitzfrankel.com, and remember to follow us on Twitter at Estate Dispute, and use our show's hashtag Wealth Matters. We've talked today about how to avoid family disputes involving inheritances and wealth. We do have an ebook on the subject that talks about many of the tips that we do, and we've been more than happy to talk to you about those. If you need to contact us, please do. Thank you so much to our newest partners, Millie Baumbush and Robert Port. We look forward to being able to assist you in any family disputes you may have regarding your inheritance or your wealth. And please remember to join us every 4th Wednesday of the month at 8:30 here at Wealth Matters on Business Radio X.